Yes. We are together already.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. We'll be starting in a couple of minutes.
You do hear me well, Christina.
We hear you perfect, and we see you perfect, loud and clear. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to this webinar, Building Bankable BESS Projects Through Local Vertical Integration. Thank you so much for joining today. My name is Cristina Galan, and I will be your moderator. So before we start with this webinar, I do have a couple of housekeeping rules. So we are all aligned. However, don't worry, because we are going to share them throughout the webinar. First and most important, this webinar is being recorded and we will send it to everyone by email in a couple of days. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A box that you will find below underneath, and you can use it anytime for our speakers today. If you are connecting on YouTube, you also have a chat available there. Ask any questions you would like to ask the speakers, and we will also have them in the question line. You also have a chat there. We highly encourage you to say hello, let us know who you are, where you're coming from, and why are you interested in this webinar. This webinar is the last webinar that we have for our webinar series of our event happening next week, March 17 and 18, RedMat Almacenamiento, where we are going to dive in 2 days into everything that impacts storage in Spain. So please, my colleague Maria will put a bit more information of that event. And if you have any questions, we're here to help. So I think I'm ready for starting with the webinar. We're going to meet first our speakers. We're going to have a presentation. Then we're going to have another intervention, and then we're going to move to the Q&A. So meeting our speakers today, we're very excited because we have two amazing panelists. So first, we have Ruben Valiente, who is the managing director of Maxxen, a leading European player in the energy storage sector. With more than 25 years of international experience in the energy transition industry, he has held roles in global multinationals, including GE and ABB, as well as founding several energy startups. An engineer graduating cum laude and MBA holder from IESE Business School, Ruben combines deep technical expertise with strong commercial, strategic, and operational leadership. His experience spans the full energy value chain, including project development and finance, EPC and OEM, R&D, product innovation, and manufacturing. That's a long list, Ruben. Throughout his career, he has focused on accelerating the deployment of clean energy solutions and scaling technologies that support the global energy transition. Well, thank you, Ruben, for joining us today, and welcome.
Thank you, Christina.
We also have Michael Riber, who is the CEO and founder of iAccess Energy, a German renewable energy developer specializing in large-scale photovoltaic and battery energy storage system projects. With more than 1.5 decades of experience in the renewable energy sector, he focuses on the development, financing, and integration of solar plus storage infrastructure and grid-connected energy assets. While building iAccess Energy, Michael also founded Cyback Systems, a technology company focused on battery management systems, owning several patents in that area. The company later became Benning CMS Technology after Benning Electrotechnic and Electrotronic GmbH and Co. KJ joined the shareholder group in 2018. Through this venture, he gained extensive experience in lithium-ion based battery systems. Today, Michael leads the development of utility-scale renewable energy projects and hybrid PV storage systems, mainly focused on the German market. His work spans the full value chain from project origination and grid integration to financing structures and investor partnerships. He is also active in building international investment partnerships for renewable infrastructure, including collaborations with investors and partners in Europe and Asia. As a speaker, he focuses on the future role of battery storage, merchant renewable energy, and innovative financing structures in accelerating the global energy transition. So, Michael, thank you so much for joining today. You do not get bored, I have to say.
Not at all right now. A lot of
No.
Thank you, Christina, for the introduction. Hi, Ruben.
Hello,
Well,
Michael.
thank you, Michael. It's great to have you here today. So my colleague is stopping to share. So Ruben, whenever you're ready, let's see if we can see your presentation.
There you go.
Okay,
I believe
perfect.
you can see it now. Thank you very much for the nice introduction, Christina. Thank you to Relmad, and especially thank you to Michael and iAccess for joining us today in this webinar. I think this collaboration is the proof that nice projects can occur in Europe with European-made solutions and vertically integration that helps deploy projects in a more sustainable but especially economic manner, as we are going to try to go through the presentation right now. So let's talk about localization. Can we do things in BESS in Europe? Because yes, we do a lot of projects, but as we know, we are all doing through the support of China. Thanks to China, we have actually made the energy transition probably faster. We need to be thankful to China. They are doing extremely nice things that we in Europe are also leveraging upon. I do believe we do need to industrialize Europe as well. And there are added values in doing so, which we will try to demonstrate today. So first of all, let's have a look at the landscape of battery projects in Europe today. Battery manufacturing facilities, rather. This was the photo from the colleagues of Volta Foundation last year in 2025. It was planned to have up to 54 different facilities all across Europe, summing up 1.5 terawatt hours of capacity. This number was actually 2 terawatt hours in 2024. So the capacity expectation is actually not increasing. It actually did decrease last year. And this is, by the way, automotive and storage battery manufacturing capacity together. In fact, operating today, just 250 gigawatt hours are available to European projects, mostly on the automotive side, because for the BESS side, in fact, just 20 gigawatt hours are online today, capacity to produce batteries. And 5 of those are from us, Maxxen. That is actually the location of our factory in Turkey. It's literally 3 hours direct flight from pretty much anywhere in Europe to reach, see, witness, audit, and come back. It's a facility that you are most welcome to come and visit anytime. But what happens moving forward? The same photo from the colleagues of Volta Foundation in 2026 tells us a decaying story. There are no longer 54 dots, there are just 42, and there is no longer 1.5 terawatt-hour capacity being planned, but just 1.1. So it looks like the direction is actually reversing. We are not making more, but probably less. Or probably we are just going for the realistic projects online. There are a lot of plans, but not all of them are coming to reality. And the reason is making batteries, good batteries, competitive batteries, it's extremely hard. We have seen how we Europeans, and I say we because I feel part also of that failure somehow. Northvolt last year didn't manage to go through despite the very big funding that they had received in the past. Making battery cells and assembling batteries is not an easy target. That is not easy, but we can still do. And I believe we do it very nicely in our own factory that you are, again, very much welcome to come and visit. Super duper, I'm not gonna say too much about that because everybody's saying that they are the best. Please come and see. It's literally a 3-hour flight from anywhere you are in Europe directly to Izmir, where the factory is. It will be probably a beautiful experience for all of you to see. Then, okay, let's try to make batteries in Europe, maybe. But in order to do batteries, no matter where, there is a license to play. First of all, bankability. And the bankability is a definition which is a little bit blurry. So what does it mean, bankability? You need to really be trustworthy for banks. And that comes with quality, that comes with references, that comes with balance sheet. And this is the list of tier 1 manufacturers that they've been actually ranked by Informa in this case. There is plenty to choose among. If you look at the upper part of the pyramid, there are 42 players. There are 42 manufacturers out there that you can actually choose among today. It's really not a consolidated market nowadays, at least for integrators. But from those 42, just 4 are Europeans. One of them, obviously, being Maxxen, as you can see there. Being in this pyramid is extremely hard. So you really need to prove a lot of things. And one of them, obviously, is balance sheet and credibility. So in our case, we are supported by a group which is more than 30 years old. We have A- long-term credit risk, which is, by the way, the same like the top manufacturer, CATL, in terms of long-term risk. And we have over 6 gigawatts of references, either as an IPP, EPC, asset manager, or manufacturer. That's what it takes to be in this list. But not only that, you really need to comply with a lot of certificates. All of us need to do that. And each of these roles means you have to spend between 10,000 and 100,000 euro to comply with, to do the test that it's actually certifying that. Especially these ones here for safety. There are crash tests, there are tests that actually are destructive. You need to invest a lot of effort in becoming a battery manufacturer. And not least, we are in Europe. Obviously, we need to comply with the EU battery passport, and we need to host all of our data here. Obviously, we do this by definition ourselves as being Europeans and manufacturing in Europe. Everyone else, not European, also needs to comply with this. And that is all okay. There is 47 players to choose among. Why not choosing Europeans? So look at this number, 20 gigawatt hours. 20 gigawatt hours is the number I mentioned there is of European-made capacity for BESS. And 20 gigawatt hours is approximately also the demand of BESS projects all across Europe last year. So supply equals demand, right? I bet most of the projects you have built so far, they were not made with made in Europe solutions. Most of this 20 gigawatt hour of European demand last year was met with made in China solutions. And that's fine. It's a pity, but that's fine. And the reason is it's difficult to make good and competitive batteries. And eventually, to make good batteries, we are able to do that in Europe, very likely. In the end, we are a continent that prides itself for quality. Cost, however, is difficult for us to achieve. In the end, you need dollar per kilowatt hour. And 70% of that in the COGS is the battery cell. And for battery cells, honestly, China is king. And China is doing it extremely nicely. If we look at the entire battery cell production last year, 2.3 terawatt hours, this includes automotive and BESS demand, there is a significant increase from the year before. But most of that increase has been met by made in China battery cells. Actually, 86% of the cells, either automotive or BESS, have been made in China last year. But in fact, 97% of the BESS battery cells were made in China. If you look at the graph on the right side, and you see the split of the different cathodes, LFP, which is basically what is being done in all BESS projects nowadays, 97% of the LFP cathodes have been made in China. So this is a China game, and that's okay. For BESS particularly, it's a 97% gain. And these are the three top suppliers making up a bit more than 50% of the supply nowadays. The rest are actually mostly Chinese as well. So that's the photo, and we just need to cope with it. That's the reality. Is there any chance for us Europeans to do batteries? There is obviously a case, and our politicians will tell you clearly it's a matter of energy sovereignty. We need to be a little bit more autonomous than what we are today. You see all these geopolitical issues. When things happen elsewhere, we are suffering because we are not the owners of our own destiny in terms of energy. And that's very true. That's a risk. Also, it becomes a defense issue, and not least, jobs and economic resilience issue. But all that is for our politicians. I believe all of us here in this webinar and most of us in the industry care for more down-to-earth topics. Value for money. Give me a good battery with a good price. If possible, quickly and with low risk that something happens when you deliver the battery. And finally, also take care of lifetime support. That's what developers, like Michael here, do care most about. And most of the audience probably will say affirmatively the same. So how do we get this in Europe? Value for money. Yes, cost is extremely crucial. Do it with suppliers, with integrators that choose the top cell suppliers. Oftentimes, the integrators that you may be facing, especially from Far East, they will actually pick and cherry pick different cell manufacturers to just get the best price for themselves. But you don't really know exactly what is the cell that you will be having in your own system. And the cell is critical. That's the real, very most important component you need to get right. Make sure, if possible, to choose one of the three suppliers that I mentioned in the slide before. By the way, in our case, we have a strong partnership with Hyfium, and we are actually very happy with it so far. Also, oftentimes, the integrator does not own the integration facility. They just put the brand. And this is very critical as well. You need to control the quality vertically. And for that, it's very important that you also own the integrating facility that is actually doing your battery. And this is oftentimes not the case. Ask your supplier, where do they manufacture their batteries, and if that facility is theirs. And last but not least, oftentimes the products are certified, but not the factory. Products need to be certified by definition, otherwise you cannot sell them. But the factory which makes them may not need to be certified. And that is also a proof of quality that you should request from your integrators. In our case, our facility, besides our products, is certified by Tube from Germany, a very qualified player to just tell the quality level of your manufacturing processes. Let's move on to supply chain. There was a very, very nice report from Accure, the battery analytics company, last year. They were analyzing 10 gigawatt hours of utility scale projects, and they came to the conclusion that 83% of the projects were meeting the requirements of a site acceptance test. 83%, which means that 17% did not. Almost 1 in 5 projects do not meet the requirements at the site acceptance test, be it late, be it capacity level, be it round trip efficiency. And the number one reason for this is transportation related damages. There is a long distance between Far East and Europe, not only in kilometers, it also can be translated in other many factors. But what happens is that there is a long distance, a long time, and many things can happen in between. And not all components, the finished goods, will arrive in time or with the quality that they should or with the capacity that they need to be complying with. So if you can choose the minimum number of onloading, offloading activities, and of course, if you choose a European manufacturer, in this case, this is the map of Maxxen, from our facility, we can directly supply anywhere in Europe from factory to site without any single onloading, offloading activity in between. And that is crucial to maintain the quality of the product all the way to site and minimize risk. And we do this, by the way, in less than 2 weeks. Our record is 2 days. Of course, if you need to bring things from Far East, you are talking about months. And if you have an issue, like unfortunately is the case nowadays in the Middle East region, times multiply. And this is a risk for your projects. And this not only translates in risk, it translates in money. Let's talk about logistics. So not less than 25,000 euro will be the cost of your transport from factory to site when the factory is in China. In our case, any factory in Europe can do it in less than 15,000, maybe 10,000 euro. That, if you translate in savings, is not less than 10,000 euro per container or 2 euro per kilowatt hour. Direct saving because of cheaper logistics. Duties. Europe has today 2.7% import duties. So if you bring in something from China, you will need to add an extra 2 euro per kilowatt hour. And this is something that we cannot control. Today is 2.7, tomorrow it can be 0 or 30%. We just don't know. Today, it is implying an extra cost of 2 euro per kilowatt hour when you are delivering eventually DDP to your site. And indirectly, obviously, delivery of goods late or the degradation that entails, it eventually translates in money as well. We say conservatively 1 euro per kilowatt hour. Some customers are telling us that this is actually the biggest concern they have. And it becomes a lot more expensive than 1 euro per kilowatt hour. So you can see here, very conservatively, there is a delta of 5 euro per kilowatt hour between a made in China and a made in Europe solution. Of course, the solution needs to be not more expensive than 5 euro per kilowatt hour, obviously. Otherwise, the math doesn't work out. In our case, we are there. And it eventually makes you save money. And exactly with the same issue that we were saying, 1 in 5 projects don't meet the required site acceptance test. There is this other topic, interfaces between EPC and manufacturers, or between the BMS and the EMS supplier and the inverter manufacturer. Interfaces, gray zones, they are most times also culprit for issues that are happening on site and nobody feels responsible for. So if you can, choose vertical integration. Choose a solution provider who can give you all, that can give you the DC side, the AC side, even the EMS, and potentially the EPC, which is, by the way, what we do. And this is the typical scenario of a solution where we are supplying our DC box, 5 megawatt hour today, our medium voltage box, which can be either 2.5 or 5 or 10 megawatt, Of course, our X-Core solution with our own BMS and EMS, and our X-Care supply of services with long-term service agreements up to 25 years. And to finalize, lifetime support. The project doesn't finish at COD, as you know. Actually, the project starts, and you have a 25-year marriage. So you better choose the right husband or wife in that relationship, because there is number one that all customers and also this Accure analysis I mentioned before are telling you is the biggest problems that you have are typically down the line on reliability and quality of the products. 1 in 5 projects do face issues of some sort with downtime or technical problems, because for sure, sooner or later, something will happen on site. I can guarantee any manufacturer, including us, will have problems. 100%. This will happen. The question is when. And in that moment, you want to have someone next to you that you trust that will go and fix problems, right? And typically, somebody who is next by and you will have more confidence with might be doing a better job at that than someone who is maybe far away. Not necessarily, but chances definitely are better. And then, of course, availability of the plant eventually is what triggers the returns on your investment. If that day when the spreads are very high and you could leverage on your battery to make money, if your battery is not working, that day, those revenues are lost. Availability is crucial. It's even more important than degradation. And that's key. You need to choose someone who is going to be giving you the best service, the best spare part management, and the best transparent show-off of a state of charge and a state of health. All this to say that local manufacturer delivers trust, delivers peace of mind, and eventually long-term value. That's what we believe. That's what we believe. And I believe that other players do believe as well. And I think that Michael will tell us also later something in these lines, because that is a fact. Euro per kilowatt hour or dollar per kilowatt hour is what we need to get right, and where we may have issues in Europe to achieve. If we get that checked, then definitely the solution is superior. That's a matter of fact. And we are there. And we would like to test it with all of you to try to get made in Europe solutions as much as possible in our European projects. Before I conclude, Cristina, as you know, we have next week the lovely RedMud storage almacenamiento event in Sevilla. Looking forward to being there. And we are going to be talking about money. We're going to be talking about how to fund those projects. Projects are typically funded with a portion of equity. If the projects are small, maybe mid-size, you may need to provide most of the capital with equity yourself. Only when you have large projects, you can start leveraging and getting funded with debt. In this space of small and mid-sized projects, where you need the most in terms of equity, is where some projects may struggle. And here we are trying to bring a solution, financing from the vendor side, where you can leverage on the equipment being supplied by us, fully funded up to 10 years, where you also don't need to have any offtake guarantee. You can actually do it with non-recourse and merchant. But this is something for next week. I'll leave it then here, Cristina, to take it back to you. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you, Ruben. Thank you so much for this presentation, offering other opportunities. There's a different side of things, and kind of giving more to think to our attendees. And also thank you for that sneak peek that you will discuss next week in Sevilla. And I'm sure people are thinking, okay, this is great. This is kind of the theoretical part, right? Numbers, etc. Presentation, but I think it's really interesting to hear Michael's point of view, who's going to give us the developer side, right? He's going to give us a little bit the more practical side of things. So Michael, thank you for joining us today. I will give you the floor. Just a quick reminder before Michael starts, if you have any questions for either Ruben or Michael, you have that Q&A box ready for you, and also the chat if you're connecting on YouTube. So Michael, thank you for being here today. So whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Christina. So basically, I'm here to tell you firsthand out of our experience in the past couple of years. I mean, we're building solar projects since 15 years. We all know, I think most of the attendees also know, that the industry is changing from PV only to PV plus BESS or BESS standalone. We foreseen that quite long ago because we've been very active in the Japanese market. But at that time, we didn't really touch the systems because we felt not comfortable with everything what was provided. Everything was handmade, was pretty much custom made. So we didn't feel comfortable to build projects for the next couple of 30 years or even a decade. So everything what was available at 2015, 2016 was basically made to last 5 years, and that's it. And it was not matching the lifespan of a PV system. And that's why we started digging deep into the battery systems before actually entering the market. That's why we funded a startup to create our own BMS system to understand batteries in general and how that one works. And after mastering the technology in the first place, or at least part of the technology, the part we can touch as an EPC company. So we're not only developer, we're also EPC. Then we started developing our own projects and then basically starting gathering experience. And I think all of our colleagues which are doing the same have the same experience. Times are getting more and more challenging. I mean, when we all started with PV systems, it was super easy. Everybody installed a single panel, an inverter, a transformer, and basically connected to the grid, 4 points, money paid out, everybody was happy. Times changed. Now we have endless lists coming from the authorities to get first the building permit. Then we have endless lists from the grid operators. Every grid operator, especially in Germany, Germany is, I guess, the world champion in making things complicated, especially on the grid side. We have endless lists.
More than Spain, Michael, you think?
I think I'm pretty sure more complicated than Spain, even more complicated than Japan. Japan was crazy, but we have endless lists to fulfill, and every grid operator, we have 800 of them in Germany, has different requirements, and so on and so on. And then there's standards, and grid codes are not matching or sometimes overruling each other. It's crazy. But basically, you have to deal with that jungle, and finally you see the daylight, and then comes to who am I choosing to basically supply me my material. So the best system we all know is the battery, the DC side, and it's an inverter. We chose for our first projects a German inverter manufacturer, SMA. And the battery was from, of course, in that case, from China. The reasons are very obvious because we couldn't afford any European product, or we were not willing to pay that amount of money. We all understand that the cell, as you said, Ruben, is a commodity now from China. There are plenty of good manufacturers. Some offer a little bit more here, a little bit more there, but basically it's all the same as long as they know what they're doing. But then comes the system integration, and that's where we got very cautious and had already some experience where we had exactly the problems you told us about. That's why I basically hooked up with you, Ruben. You know, we're now one of your clients. You were directly identifying the pain points. It's not only the price, it's also the support you need. It's the interface which needs to be basically made by ourselves, because nothing is in the market. Everybody tells us, yeah, you can buy this. You take it from anywhere you want, and you want to buy it and to purchase it, then you realize it's not there, and you have to do a lot yourself. And if you do a lot yourself, if you're programming your own EMS, your own software, then you need somebody who's responding in time and not after 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And we all know if you talk to a big company, big companies get slow when you have several topics open, not only one, and the product is not probably made for the German market, which is the case. In our case, we need a product which is fitting to the German market, and that's not a US product, that's not a Chinese product. It needs to be made to fulfill the German regulations. They're endless. I don't want to spend any more time about that. And then, of course, after having all these modifications, then you need to squeeze it into your system and make all work. And that's where we really have some pain points and had some bad experience and have also good experience. And as you said, no project. We probably built 50 or 100 projects, I don't know. But not one of them went from A to Z without any problem. Impossible, basically. That's why it needs companies like us to work on these problems and solve them as quick as possible. And for solving the problems as quick as possible, we need partners which are able to fulfill our request, which are answering the phone, which have teams which are able to fulfill what we need from them. And that's something we found from you. We have other partners which were also able, but really critical is really time. And I had to smile when you said €1 or $1 per kilowatt hour you can have in penalties. I would say we burn every week. That's 1 day. 1 day is probably $1 of penalty we would have by a delay right now in
Yeah,
Germany.
you are an example of those other customers that actually tell this is the biggest cost pain point that you may have on delays, all the revenue losses besides degradation of the battery technically, they add up to real money. It's not only the direct saving on logistics or on import duties, which of course also account, it's the indirect losses of a project which is not running in time or with the capacity that you should. I was actually telling Michael this analysis that I was mentioning from Accure, which I found it extremely interesting. They were saying 83% of the projects do meet SAT requirements, which means that 17% do not. So more or less 1 in 5 projects do not achieve SAT, meaning in time or in capacity or in whatever other requirements are needed at SAT. Is this your experience, or how do you see this number?
I mean, the site acceptance test is not a standardized procedure, right? So meeting the general requirements, I think, is easy. Capacity and maybe in time, but even in time is a problem for some suppliers, I can tell. But other things which come later, which is, hey guys, I need the Modbus table to basically integrate everything into our system, and hey, the numbers are not matching, and the time it takes for them to reply that is probably not part of the site acceptance test, but probably a big problem for the total system to get up and running, or basically running on an automated basis. Right now, we are running several projects on a manual basis, and which is probably not what you want to do, right? So I can tell from our experience.
As long as it works, right? Availability is everything.
Yes,
so
it works, but it's not working like it should be in
absolutely.
this decade. It's working like 50 years ago, right? So manually turning on and off. So that's something which adds up. And the second part is, of course, as you said, their indirect costs. And for us as a developer, every project which goes online half a year earlier, that's a lot of money for us. Because first of all, in Germany, I don't know about Spanish markets, but in Germany, the revenue streams are basically going down in the predictions for BESS systems, meaning if I go 1 year later online for the same time period, I probably have 50 euros less per kilowatt, which for a 2-hour system is 25 euros per kilowatt hour. That's a lot of money. And I have suppliers which have lead times of 7 to 10 months, which are way cheaper than you, Ruben, you know.
Not way cheaper. Maybe a little cheaper. Maybe.
enough to look at them and order from them, but we can only order from them in case we have a visibility or a late grid connection, because the grid connection is the last piece in the puzzle, and the grid operator tells us we can grid connect or do the grid connection in 12 months. Then I can order from them. But then comes the other part, which is also important. That's all the auxiliaries. Everybody is talking about a BESS container. Yes, no problem. Buy 5 megawatt hours like a commodity. But nobody is talking about the auxiliaries. So we, for example, build a lot of PV DC-DC coupled systems. That means we need special auxiliaries which are able to handle the currents, which have built-in DC disconnectors under load, and so on and so on. So there's a lot of special stuff which I had to build myself before I met you. Now you are supplying that part way cheaper than I could do it, and it's perfectly matching to the system. So you basically customized a little bit your product from the outside, which gave us an additional advantage in the cost side. So the BESS system was a little bit more expensive like with the other guys, but the overall system got much cheaper by your work. And it was pretty easy for us. We just said what we want, and 4 weeks later we had the design, and another 4 weeks later we were able to order it. So that's a very short turnaround time for special engineering requests. Same for the auxiliary transformers I don't know about the Spanish market, in Germany. Everything which is not really related to the battery itself. For example, the chiller needs to have an auxiliary transformer and a measurement device in between. And that one is not standard. It's nothing you have in other markets. So we would have needed to do that our own. With you, it was quite easy. We said, hey, we need it. Please do it. And a few weeks later, we had that solution. And so overall, the costs were driven down significantly. And talking about the AC skid we're ordering now from you, same there. We get probably the same quality or the same level of quality we get from Germany, but much faster lead times. Like we're talking about 3 months now, right? I hope so.
Yes, absolutely. No, you hope, and you're definitely getting it there.
Yeah, so in 3 months, and
This is the topic of making sure the supply chain, not only the DC side, but also the AC medium voltage side, is
right.
under the same umbrella of responsibilities, no? Because I do believe we've seen situations where one party is delivering, the other one is not, or they don't understand each other because, hey, are supplied by different partners, and then someone else needs to do the rework to make it jointly work.
Exactly.
Can you tell us something about that when you get this isolated?
Yeah, and it's 6 months what we gain by ordering from you from Turkey with a very short delivery time. That helps a lot, and half year is for us is a significant amount of money of the project, and it's probably all the time worth to spend with you guys. And of course, then there's the last part is the reactivity. If there is something, if we need something very quickly, we have the possibility to sneak in and get something out of the general delay times or delivery times. That's also important, right? So having someone who's able to deliver very fast.
Michael, you are doing now solar and storage projects. There is a clear case. So most of us coming from solar, that's the truth. Now we realize that when renewables are penetrating very deeply, flexibility is required. It's a matter of fact. We cannot further penetrate with renewables if we don't have storage. Now there is a very beautiful business case, just because it is required, in Spain, where Iberia in general, where you have 40 gigawatts of solar connected without any battery whatsoever, which means that the prices are plummeting during midday, especially in summer. So many hours are negative or zero, or virtually being paid very little. prices are being cannibalized. Maybe the effect is less pronounced in Germany, but it also happens, and you are hybridizing existing solar projects. Can you tell us how your experience of developing that is for the audience, also how to make these projects work quickly and reliably, no? Because that's also in the end what you need.
Right. The retrofit is something which is unavoidable in Germany. We have negative prices for electricity during the entire span of the summer. When there is enough sun, then basically the prices are negative at between 10 and 2 o'clock p.m. For sure. And on the flip side, in the evening, the prices are super high. They're like above 12 cents in Germany right now. All the time after 6 o'clock, you can count on it. It's above 12 cents per kilowatt hour, which sounds crazy, I guess, for some people.
Yes.
But that's the span we have. We have negative prices during the day or zero if we produce it ourselves. And then we have 12 cents in the evening. So it's an absolute no-brainer to retrofit batteries. And of course, you have the problem with the building permit, but basically there's no way around it. And everybody finds a little spot on his field to install those few containers. And I think it's a very, very good business model, especially if you have a financing option. I mean, that's something you briefly just tipped. But I mean, right now the banks are super nervous in Germany because we have some political issue ongoing. But banks in general, I guess, are super nervous. They're not known to be super proactive and going the risk. But right now they're not so keen to go into the funding. But with your solution, which we really are looking forward to explore, of the leasing, there we have an option which works perfectly would work on the number basis perfectly for all of our projects. And we're looking forward to also explore that part, which is not very common, that you get a leasing option from your supplier for all the material we could get from you, right?
Christina, I think we do have some questions from the audience, I
Yep.
feel.
Sure. We have a couple of pre-submitted questions, but we also have one question from Kepa Diaz, which is a little bit what you discussed in your presentation. By the way, thank you, Michael, for your point of view and giving us the developer side. So Ruben, this one goes for you, and I think it's a little bit a summary in a nutshell of your presentation. So can you please explain the depth of what we call European manufacturing, assembling installations, full value chain, including R&D?
Super important. So when we say made in Europe, let's do in Europe, what does it mean, no? There was coincidentally, if the audience is aware about, I'm sure it is, this draft being released last week by the European Union on the Industrial Acceleration Act, which is talking about exactly that, what it means to be European and where is to be produced that it means European. And that is another question, no? So we were saying, okay, let's try to do everything in the European Union, if possible. The answer is, it's just not possible. Technically, as you saw, the graphs, is impossible in a short period of time to get rid of the dependency that we have from China. We just let it be so, and that's a fact today, which we need to handle, particularly on battery cell manufacturing for LFP technology. I do believe it is a fight you cannot play anymore in Europe, that we cannot just make it happen, at least with the right price level. China does it extremely well. That's the typical product that it's being supplied in thousands, produced copy-paste every single day, doing exactly the same in volumes, because also there is a captive demand in China that it's demanding those productions. And when we will try to do this in Europe, we are trying not as competitively as I believe China is able to do so. This European Industrial Act I was mentioning is talking about, in 3 years, making sure that all tenders have European-made battery cells. And that's fantastic, and I really hope for that. I am not sure that we can do that by ourselves alone without partnering with our colleagues in China, number one. And I'm wondering if that is also what we need to do. No, the solution around the battery cell is what eventually matters for the local customer. And Michael was actually mentioning there are so many nitty-gritty solutions, things that you need to do for the specific project, for the specific jurisdiction, for the specific connection. That's what I feel we need to do 100% in Europe, honestly. Also, the transport of these super heavy containers from Far East is so hard. Beyond the risks and beyond the sustainability topics, it's just so expensive, and there are so many issues that can happen in between. That last mile, I believe, needs to be industrialized in Europe. There was the question talking about R&D itself. So R&D needs to be as much as European as possible. The supply chain of certain things will not come from Europe no matter what we want, at least not in the short term. If we can actually make solutions with Chinese battery cells, but everything else being done locally, I think this is a very big win. And for that, you need R&D, which needs to be local, of course. And it is obviously not rocket science to make containers of batteries, but it requires certain knowledge and expertise and investment. So there needs to be also a willingness from entrepreneurs with experience to make these kind of investments and make them work. And it's not so easy, to be honest. We have done it, we are doing it, we are welcoming more Europeans to try to do the same. I would love to have more European competitors. It's just not easy. We produce in Turkey. The company, by the way, is Swiss. Maxxen is Swiss incorporated here in Zurich, where I'm actually talking to you from. Our factory is in Turkey. What it means made in Europe. Turkey is not in European Union. However, in this Industrial Act draft, we acknowledge that industrializing the region is what matters. And it might not be then through sometimes a European Union country, but partners around us. UK is no longer in the European Union, but I do feel a made in UK product is a made in Europe product. Turkey, it has actually most of its output also dedicated as a country for the European continent. And it's been a long-established partner for the European Union. There are actually free trade agreements between both countries, or the European Union and Turkey. Turkey is actually considered in this European Acceleration Industrial Act as a made in Europe product. UK is also considered as a made in Europe product. There are even talks about expanding what this region means. I think the word is resilience. You cannot so heavily depend on a single supplier, on a single supplying country for your energy needs. Today, China is producing 97% of the battery cells for BESS in the world. And that's okay, so long everything goes fine. One day you can have an issue. We don't want any issues, but it may happen. You never know. Your politics are always depending on other factors that are not under our control. And trying to make this also European would be very important. I don't think this is going to be very fastly done, but the rest, I do believe, can be very, very quickly done and comply with this Industrial Act, which is going to come live soon, is, I think, also our obligation as Europeans for the generations to come. Honestly, we also need to think about us in Europe. How are we going to supply our own energy needs for the future? I don't know if it was a very long answer to a shorter question, Christina.
Not at all. Not at all. I think it's actually good to develop these questions, and because it was a very broad question, so I think you gave it a full depth reply. Michael, is there anything that you would like to add to this question? Please feel free, and any of these questions you both can reply, of course.
I mean, I could only add a shorter part. I mean, everything but the cell is produced from Maxxen, I guess, and there was nothing I couldn't get from them right now, which I needed on the hardware side. So I guess everything is produced but the cell and the battery cell itself, and that's perfectly fine for me because I mean, if somebody produces 100 times more of a product, he at least can do it in the double of amount of quality. So I mean, in the future, if we want to have cell production in Europe, it really needs to be big and fully automated, otherwise not competitive. So I mean, that's pretty clear. And we tried it many times with solar panels, and it failed all the time. I mean, I'm here in Freiburg, where everything started in the PV industry. So the two big cell and panel manufacturer, which both are bankrupt or went bankrupt and now rebranded, started here, and basically it was no chance when China started in quality and pricing. So I mean, it's a pity, but it is like it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Okay, next question. Ruben, I'm going to start with you, and then Michael, if you would like to add on, feel free to do so. Would you consider thermal storage battery for tech for Europe?
Yeah, absolutely. And it works. I'm questioning how competitive that as a solution, at least to produce electricity, that might be. Thermodynamics don't play in favor of thermal storage for electricity generation. But absolutely, yes. And I think we've done it already. Also, in the solar times, we had before PV, we had CSP, and we were producing electricity out of heating up water, producing steam. Then we are also storing the heat to produce electricity later. And we know how to do that. Now, is this a competitive solution? I may question now. Today, with the lithium-ion battery technology being so extremely competitive, most energy storage projects that you may think of are going to be using that technology. But other technologies are very welcome. And if they are made in Europe, even better.
Okay. So you can still consider a marriage there.
Yeah, of course.
You're open to it.
Fair
enough.
Michael, I wouldn't on that perspective, because basically technology is outdated, never worked. So I don't know any project which worked continuously. There are CSP projects in Thailand, in US, one in Spain, but none of them really worked as far as I know and I'm aware of. I visited several of them, and basically it's a steam turbine, and the steam turbine is high maintenance, and a steam turbine is not made or competitive right now to a battery. If we see the capex costs and the OpEx costs, I can't see that this technology will ever take off again. While I don't see the need for it, because it's also short-term storage. You can't store for half a year or something. There are different technologies in the market which I would consider, but it's not our business right now. We are more in the short-term storage business. But there, gravity storage or whatever you name it, that could be something. But right now for thermal, I don't see any big benefit right now as an engineer. But happy to be convinced. So
you never know. Okay, fair enough. So I think we have time for one last question, which is perfect because it's the last question that we have in our Q&A box. So it's very linked to what we're talking about, politics and the cyber security is a big issue nowadays. So Ruben, where is the software source to run BESS, and how is the cyber threat mitigated?
Well, if we play in Europe, whoever is playing in Europe, whether you make it in Europe or you make it elsewhere, you need to comply with European regulation, and that is also considering cybersecurity. In fact, the European Industrial Acceleration Act I was referring to, the draft that was shown last week, is talking about the requirement to use only made in Europe BMS in 1 year. So that is going to also impact a lot any potential cybersecurity threat that you may think of, because by definition, you will need to have that embedded in your system if you want to sell in Europe. It's our case by definition, right? So we are here, and then we are doing our own EMS and hosting of the data, EMS, and complying with the cybersecurity topics that we are meant to be complying with in Europe by definition. It might not be the case with others. I cannot say that. I assume that is the case because sooner or later, that is not a question if you can do it. It's just not possible. It's just an obligation that you will need to have also your BMS made in Europe. And obviously with everything that it comes with data being hosted in Europe. And I do believe that is important. More than the hardware, we are talking about how to control these things. And that is the real thin line we need to get right. And I think that is a very good move from the European Union in this case to push for this requirement. Hardware could be produced elsewhere. Of course, we would like to have it also made in Europe, as Maxxen try to incentivize and ask everyone else to try to do the same. But software is even more critical. And the question is spot on. Totally agree. And it's going to be an obligation if it is not already today. Yeah.
Perfect. Michael, would you like to add something else?
Sorry,
your EMS, Michael, BMS, in fact, you made in Europe.
I mean, exactly. We developed a BMS and a BMS algorithm, and we have a hardware partner which sits in Germany with really good experience. And we're working on that one because we identified that as one of the key points, which also will extend the lifespan of a battery system. And cybersecurity, of course, it's a must-have. So basically, we are well prepared for that. At the same time, we see that everybody has a kind of solution, but I think once everything is really in place and checked, then maybe there's another dynamic in this market, because we don't see it implemented into the last bit. So right now. So, but I think Maxxen is well prepared and in touch with the right partners, so should work out.
All right. Well, perfect. Well, thank you so much. We have one last question that means that how to make a proposal with numbers for these gentlemen to take a look at what we have and could arrange local manufacturing in Europe properly. We will provide contact emails at the end, but I don't know if there's anything else that you would like to add, Michael and Ruben, in case someone wants to contact you directly.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, the time's up. I wanted to thank both of you, Michael and Ruben, for a fantastic session. Thank you for giving us a new things to think about and consider. Also, thank you for Maxxen for sponsoring this webinar. We will send the recording and materials approved by our speakers in a couple of days, and we hope to see everyone in Seville or in Turkey at Maxxen's facilities. You never know.
Everyone welcome. See you in Sevilla next week, in Turkey the week after.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much, and we hope you all have a fantastic day. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.